is Genesis 18, 1 through 15. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. And when he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 sheaves of the finest flour. Knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. And he then brought some curds and milk as the calf had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a baby, a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So she laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I didn't laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." And this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
But he wrote a book called The 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. Now my understanding is that this church looked at this book in small groups. So I don't know if you remember this book, but The 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. And for a long time, this was a very hot book. It's still a very good book, and I recommend it to anyone who's interested. Turns out when I went hunting, I've got 2 copies, so I'll even share if you want to. But Bishop Schnase says there are 5 practices that fruitful congregations do: passionate worship, intentional faith development, risk-taking mission and service, extravagant generosity. But number 1 on the hit parade, number 1 practice of fruitful congregations is what he calls radical hospitality. Radical hospitality. Now, I think that's what Abraham was showing. If Abraham were here, he would assure us, no, that's not anything radical. That was the law of the desert. It was an unwritten law. But the people who lived in the desert during Abraham's day understood that it was us against the desert. Because the desert is out to kill you. And if you don't believe that, you forgot what it felt like when you stepped out of the car and tried to get to this building as fast as you could. We understand what it means for the desert to be out to kill us, doesn't it? I told some of you, I started my walk before 7 o'clock yesterday morning. I stepped out the door and thought, I can't breathe. We understand what it means for humans against the desert. And so the law during Abraham's time, the unwritten law, was an understanding, was that anyone who came to your dwelling place, whether it was a tent or a house or whatever, but anyone who came to your dwelling place had to be offered hospitality. You had to offer them water. You had to offer them shade. You had to offer them something to eat. And so Abraham would tell us, I wasn't doing anything radical. I was just doing what the desert versus human beings demands. Now, you and I may understand about desert weather, but even more than that, I think you and I understand what it means for the people of faith to be against the desert. Sometimes the whole world tends to act like a desert, and it acts like it's out to get us. And so the reality is, if we're going to keep our faith together, then we've got to stick together. If we're going to be the people of faith against the world that's out to get us, then we've got to be the people of faith together. We can't do it by ourselves. Goodness knows there are people who try. But that doesn't work out very well. That doesn't spread the message. And so if you and I are going to be the people of faith, if you and I are going to be the spiritual descendants of Abraham, which we are, then that means, among other things, we have got to practice radical hospitality. Now, the first thing about Abraham is that he was not just waiting around twiddling his thumbs for somebody to walk through the door. The scripture is clear. It says, he saw them, and he ran to them. There was no waiting for somebody to come in the door. And sometimes churches wait around for that. Oh, if you build it, they will come. No, they won't. We have got to be on the lookout. We've got to be on the lookout for those who are ready for a closer relationship with Jesus Christ and who are looking to do that through the church. And that means even on Sunday mornings, friends. On Sunday mornings, the narthex, the foyer out there, from say about 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock, for the next 30 minutes, is frequently empty. There is nobody there. And on more than one occasion, this church has had people who came in, who looked around and saw nobody in the foyer, who peeked through the sanctuary door, and if there wasn't anybody rehearsing, they looked at each other and said, I guess they're not here today. And they will have turned around and left. So we've got to be like Abraham. We have got to be sitting at the tent door in the church foyer waiting for the guests to arrive. And if it's raining, if it ever rains again, if it's raining, it may be that all those big umbrellas that are out there, I don't know if you got them at some point or people just left them, but they're down here. What would it be like if we imitated Abraham to the point of running out to the car with an umbrella and helping people get in? It's easy to be a friendly church. Friendly churches are friendly to their friends. Welcoming churches are planning for the guests who are coming to be with them. So Abraham ran to meet these people. Now, it didn't make Buddy do it. But what the scripture says is that he prostrated himself, which means he got down on the ground, flat on his face. And I'm a little bit afraid that, some of us might not get back up if we did that. Plus the fact, let's face it, if we had first-time people and we fell on the ground flat on our face, we'd probably scare them to pieces. So probably that is not going to be how we do it. But Buddy knew the substitute, didn't he? When I said, okay, you're Abraham, and these three strangers have come, what do? And he stuck out his hand. So, as opposed to prostrating ourselves, how about if you made it your goal to shake hands and give a warm smile, 3, 4, 5 people that you don't really know? Now, sometimes that's embarrassing. Hi, I'm Kathryn. Oh, hi, I've been attending this church for 42 years. My stepmother does a great job of that. Hi, I'm Ginger. Hi, I've been attending this church for 42 years. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I've had brain surgery. I don't have that excuse. Just bad memory. But what would happen if we began imitating our ancestor in the faith, Abraham, practicing radical hospitality? And then did you notice what he did? Once he persuaded them to stay, then Abraham got a team together. He got a team together. Abraham was smart enough to know he was not going to be able to do this by himself. So he tells Sarah, Sarah, now, Jerry, you got to work on your translation, because hers said bread. The better translation is she made cakes. So on the second day of Vacation Bible School, when they study this story, the snacks that day are Sarah's cakes. So when you go out today, you can have one of Sarah's cakes. I have no idea how she made them. And as it turns out, if I'd have been thinking, I would have gotten Sara Lee cakes, but I didn't. But there are Sarah's cakes out there, so you can have the second day of Vacation Bible School snacks on your way out to remember that Sarah made cakes to practice hospitality. And Abraham chose the fine calf and gave it to the next team member, and the servant said, make barbecue. What do you think it would be like if our church formed a group called the Lunch Bunch? What if our church formed the Lunch Bunch, and it would be the Lunch Bunch's responsibility to keep an eye peeled for first-time guests, and would make sure that sometime during the service, whether it was before the service started, whether it was during the passing of peace, or after the service is over, would say to those guests, let me take you to lunch. Now, it's one thing when the pastor does something like that, but friends, you cannot wait on a pastor to do stuff like that. If the pastor makes contact with first-time visitors, then the visitors say, oh, they have a nice pastor. But you and I are United Methodist, and we know perfectly well that United Methodist pastors come and go. For a lot of my colleagues in the ministry today is their last Sunday in their pulpit. And next Sunday, July the 1st, will be their first Sunday in the new pulpit, because Methodist pastors move around. And it's fine for first-time visitors to get attached to a pastor, but sometimes, especially in the United Methodist Church, that can lead to a dangerous situation. Because sometimes when the pastor moves, the people move with the pastor, and that's not healthy. It's up to the church. The loyalty, the vows that we take are made to the church, not to the pastor. And so it's incumbent on us that we practice a radical hospitality so that we say to these people, you are welcome and I want to know about your life. That's not just the pastor's responsibility. And you do not need to come to me after the service is over to say, oh, I think we ought to do this, or I think somebody ought to do that. You are somebody. You are somebody, and you don't have to wait for me. If you need permission, you've got it. Practice hospitality. Be Abraham's children. Interestingly enough, Bishop Schnase says that the adjectives can rotate, that any of the adjectives can go with any of the nouns in this subtitle. So, yes, it can be radical hospitality. It can also be passionate hospitality. It can be intentional hospitality. It can be risk-taking hospitality. It can be extravagant hospitality. But that, of course, is only if we want to be a fruitful congregation. Only if we want to be the true spiritual sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah. That's our choice. It's our choice. So I hope when you leave today, you'll have one of Sarah's cakes to remember the story, to remember to pray for Vacation Bible School. But I hope that you will make the choice to be one of the sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah and decide to practice radical hospitality. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Christian discipleship is not limited to a couple of hours on Sunday morning, certainly not limited to this building. Strempke, before he became a bishop in the United Methodist Church, wrote a book, and I don't know how many of you may have been a part. My understanding, this was all before I got here, so I don't know for sure. But he wrote a book called The 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. Now, my understanding is that this church looked at this book in small groups. So I don't know if you remember this book, but the 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. And for a long time, this was a very hot book. It's still a very good book, and I recommend it to anyone who's interested. Turns out when I went hunting, I've got 2 copies, so I'll even share if you want to. But Bishop Strempke says there are 5 practices that fruitful congregations do. Passionate worship, intentional faith development, risk-taking mission and service, extravagant generosity. But number 1 on the hit parade, number 1 practice of fruitful congregations is what he calls radical hospitality. Radical hospitality. Now, I think that's what Abraham was showing. If Abraham were here, he would assure us, no, that's not anything radical. That was the law of the desert. It was an unwritten law. But the people who lived in the desert during Abraham's day understood that it was us against the desert. Because the desert is out to kill you. And if you don't believe that, you forgot what it felt like when you stepped out of the car and tried to get to this building as fast as you could. We understand what it means for the desert to be out to kill us, doesn't it? I told some of you, I started my walk before 7 o'clock yesterday morning. I stepped out the door and thought, I can't breathe. We understand what it means for humans against the desert. And so the law during Abraham's time, the unwritten law, was an understanding, was that anyone who came to your dwelling place, whether it was a tent or a house or whatever, but anyone who came to your dwelling place had to be offered hospitality. You had to offer them water. You had to offer them shade. You had to offer them something to eat. And so Abraham would tell us, I wasn't doing anything radical. I was just doing what the desert versus human beings demands. Now, you and I may understand about desert weather, but even more than that, I think you and I understand what it means for the people of faith to be against the desert. Sometimes the whole world tends to act like a desert, and it acts like it's out to get us. And so the reality is, if we're going to keep our faith together, then we've got to stick together. If we're going to be the people of faith against the world that's out to get us, then we've got to be the people of faith together. We can't do it by ourselves. Goodness knows there are people who try. But that doesn't work out very well. That doesn't spread the message. And so if you and I are going to be the people of faith, if you and I are going to be the spiritual descendants of Abraham, which we are, then that means, among other things, we have got to practice radical hospitality. Now, the first thing about Abraham is that he was not just waiting around twiddling his thumbs for somebody to walk through the door. The scripture is clear. It says he saw them and he ran to them. There was no waiting for somebody to come in the door. And sometimes churches wait around for that. Oh, if you build it, they will come. No, they won't. We have got to be on the lookout. We've got to be on the lookout for those who are ready for a closer relationship with Jesus Christ and who are looking to do that through the church. And that means even on Sunday mornings, friends. On Sunday mornings, the narthex, the foyer out there, from say about 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock, for the next 30 minutes is frequently empty. There is nobody there. And on more than one occasion, this church has had people who came in, who looked around and saw nobody in the foyer, who peeked through the sanctuary door, and if there wasn't anybody rehearsing, they looked at each other and said, I guess they're not here today. And they will have turned around and left. So we've got to be like Abraham. We have got to be sitting at the tent door in the church foyer waiting for the guests to arrive. And if it's raining, if it ever rains again, if it's raining, it may be that all those big umbrellas that are out there, I don't know if you got them at some point or people just left them, but they're down here. What would it be like if we imitated Abraham to the point of running out to the car with an umbrella and helping people get in? It's easy to be a friendly church. Friendly churches are friendly to their friends. Welcoming churches are planning for the guests who are coming to be with them. So Abraham ran to meet these people. Now, it didn't make Buddy do it. But what the scripture says is that he prostrated himself, which means he got down on the ground, flat on his face. And I'm a little bit afraid that, some of us might not get back up if we did that. Plus the fact, let's face it, if we had first-time people and we fell on the ground flat on our face, we'd probably scare them to pieces. So probably that is not going to be how we do it. But Buddy knew the substitute, didn't he? When I said, okay, you're Abraham, and these three strangers have come, what do you do? And he stuck out his hand. So, as opposed to prostrating ourselves, how about if you made it your goal to shake hands and give a warm smile, 3 or 4 or 5 people that you don't really know? Now, sometimes that's embarrassing. Hi, I'm Kathryn. Oh, hi, I've been attending this church for 42 years. My stepmother does a great job of that. Hi, I'm Ginger. Hi, I've been attending this church for 42 years. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I've had brain surgery. I don't have that excuse. Just bad memory. But what would happen if we began imitating our ancestor in the faith, Abraham, practicing radical hospitality? And then did you notice what he did? Once he persuaded them to stay, then Abraham got a team together. He got a team together. Abraham was smart enough to know he was not going to be able to do this by himself. So he tells Sarah, now, Jerry, you got to work on your translation, because hers said bread. The better translation is she made cakes. So on the second day of Vacation Bible School, when they study this story, the snacks that day are Sarah's cakes. So when you go out today, you can have one of Sarah's cakes. I have no idea how she made them. And as it turns out, if I'd have I've been thinking I would have gotten Sara Lee cakes, but I didn't. But there are Sarah's cakes out there, so you can have the second day of Vacation Bible School snacks on your way out to remember that Sarah made cakes to practice hospitality. And Abraham chose a fine calf and gave it to the next team member, and the servant said, make barbecue. What do you think it would be like if our church formed a group called the Lunch Bunch? What if our church formed the Lunch Bunch, and it would be the Lunch Bunch's responsibility to keep an eye peeled for first-time guests, and would make sure that sometime during the service, whether it was before the service started, whether it was during the passing of the feast, or after the service is over, would say to those guests, let me take you to lunch. Now, it's one thing when the pastor does something like that, but friends, you cannot wait on a pastor to do stuff like that. If the pastor makes contact with first-time visitors, then the visitors say, oh, they have a nice pastor. But you and I are United Methodist, and we know perfectly well that United Methodist pastors come and go. For a lot of my colleagues in the ministry today is their last Sunday in their pulpit. And next Sunday, July 1st, will be their first Sunday in the new pulpit, because Methodist pastors move around. And it's fine for first-time visitors to get attached to a pastor, but sometimes, especially in the United Methodist Church, that can lead to a dangerous situation. Because sometimes when the pastor moves, the people move with the pastor, and that's not healthy. It's up to the church. The loyalty, the vows that we take are made to the church, not to the pastor. And so it's incumbent on us that we practice a radical hospitality so that we say to these people, you are welcome and I want to know about your life. That's not just the pastor's responsibility. And you do not need to come to me after the service is over to say, oh, I think we ought to do this, or I think somebody ought to do that. You are somebody. You are somebody, and you don't have to wait for me. If you need permission, you've got it. Practice hospitality. Be Abraham's children. Interestingly enough, Bishop Schnase says that the adjectives can rotate, that any of the adjectives can go with any of the nouns in this subtitle. So, yes, it can be radical hospitality. It can also be passionate hospitality. It can be intentional hospitality. It can be risk-taking hospitality. It can be extravagant hospitality. But that, of course, is only if we want to be a fruitful congregation. Only if we want to be the true spiritual sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah. That's our choice. It's our choice. So I hope when you leave today, you'll have one of Sarah's cakes to remember the story, to remember to pray for Vacation Bible School. But I hope that you will make the choice to be one of the sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah and decide to practice radical hospitality. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.